Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the all-new 2017 release of the number 10 Danica Patrick Aspen Dental Ford Fusion NASCAR kit. It's a 124 scale kit, number 85-4219. Now it's a skill level build, mostly because of small parts and large decals. It fits in with most of the older style kits from the past because they were 124 scale too, and it has 104 parts molded in white and clear with vinyl tires and metal pins. The decals are quite extensive, and they include driver suit decals for the figure. Now the instructions are typical book format. They're well laid out and simple to follow, and there are multiple assemblies that you could combine to make them even quicker. And one point of interest is that the windows come pre-painted with the surrounds. When you're done, the dimensions are just about 8 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 2 1/4 inches high. Now let's not forget that Danica was the first woman to win an Indy car race, the first to lead the Indy 500, and the first to win a NASCAR pole position. She's been around and she's had an accomplished racing career. So here are the contents of the kit. And as you can see, it's pretty extensive parts count with the pre-painted windows there. Now this is my version of the open box review. It takes about 10 seconds to see all the parts in the box. But that won't help you build the kit. And that's what we're going to help you do. Now note that we'll probably use Model Master type liquid cement for most of the construction, but occasionally super glue for strength and sometimes white glue for clear parts. And so that you're safe, please follow all of the safety and use suggestions that are provided by the manufacturer for any of the products that you see or hear used in the review. Here are the decals for this kit, including the stickers for the headlights and the tail lights. Now, just like your NASCAR counterpart, these are very extensive graphics, and they're quite large, some of them. I strongly suggest you use some of the aftermarket setting solutions to help place them and put them in position. You can also use plenty of warm water to help facilitate that process. Construction starts with the engine, so assemble the block, the heads, the intake, the oil pan, and the timing cover and fuel rails, and paint those aluminum. It's pretty good detail, just like a NASCAR engine would appear. Now, the carburetor is gold tint, and the belt's starter oil pump and valve covers are flat black. The solenoid has gold tone on it, on the starter solenoid, and the oil lines are steel on the oil pump. The alternator is silver color, and the headers are steel color. Now assemble the parts once the painting is dry. Get these parts out of the kit for the next set of constructions, and assemble the rear axle to the suspension, and that's a flat white color. The chassis and the front suspension is flat white also. The springs are steel color and the shocks are black. The oil reservoir is steel color, and install the front suspension and the springs, and then add the reservoir, shocks, and the rear suspension. Collect these parts from the kit and paint the brake rotors steel with gold calipers. The A-arms are black and the drive shaft is steel colored too. Now the cover control arm and the sway bar are flat white. Install the control arm and the sway bar, and then add the drive shaft and cover. Now add the A-arms into place, and then add all the brakes around on all four corners. Then install the motor into place on its mounts. It fits in there pretty well and is pretty properly located, so you shouldn't have any trouble with it. And here's a photo of what it'll look like when you get to this point. Grab these parts for the next step, then paint the seat, shifter, and pedals flat black. Add the firewall brace and paint the firewall flat white. The steering column and the exhaust are steel colored, and the fire extinguisher is red with aluminum highlight, and then the booster can is aluminum, as are the master cylinders. Now install the pedals, master cylinders, booster can, and install the firewall into place. Add the shifter, and then add the seat and the fire extinguisher, and flip it over and install the exhaust on the bottom. So gather up these parts and paint the roll cage and the fuel cell flat white. Filler tube is steel colored and flat black, and the oil line is gray and aluminum. Now the back deck is flat white. Now add the sidewall, the fuel cell, filler tube, and the oil line into place, and install the rear brace and the back deck. Gather up the parts you see here for the cage and the air tube there, and paint the cage parts flat white, and the air tube is flat black. Then the window net is flat black as well. Now install the side, rear brace, inner brace, and tube in that order. These are the parts for the driver figure, which is optional. So if you want to add Danica to your vehicle, then you need to add it now. So paint the body light blue and medium blue after assembly. The seat belts are black and aluminum. Then add the decals as noted in the instructions, and attach the driver to the seat using some glue to fix her into place. Locate these parts and paint the cage parts flat white, the dash is flat black, and the wheel is flat black with aluminum spokes. Now the mirror is flat black and aluminum as well, and the gauge is aluminum also. On the dash, the control boxes and dials are red. Now add the decals there and install the gauge to the column to the dash, and install the cage parts in place and add the dash into position. Assemble the radiator and paint it aluminum with a flat black fan, and the hoses are flat black and the shocks are a semi-gloss black. Now the air cleaner is a flat white. Now install the radiator and the hoses, add the air cleaner, and then the shocks can be added to the frame and the A-arms. Let's work on the wheel assemblies. So paint the rim fronts black with a yellow ring, and then the lugs and the cap are steel color. The rim backs are black, and to give the tires a nice look, press and roll the tread area on a sheet of fine sandpaper, about a 220 grit on a flat surface, and it scuffs up and roughs up the surface there to make it look like a little tire wear and more realistic. Now install a rim front into each tire, add a metal pin to the rim back, and then install the rim back to the other side of the tire. So go ahead and grab up the tires, and for each one install the metal pin into its receiver, and put each of those tires into position on both the front and the back into the spindle or axle locations, and press them in fully. Make sure that you put a little back pressure on the back side to make sure you don't damage your suspension. Your vehicle is starting to take shape pretty nicely, and here you see you're at the point of having what we call a rolling chassis, complete with driver. So things are coming along nicely at this point. Go ahead and get these parts out here for prepping the body, and then sand the parts with some fine sandpaper for paint. And this was a new mold, so I didn't see any blemishes on it whatsoever to speak of, and the fit and finish of the hood was excellent. In fact, the whole model is very well designed, and everything fits pretty well. The molds are crisp and clean, so it should be a pretty easy build in that respect. After the body has had a chance to air dry from being rinsed off and cleaned up, it's time to tape off the segments that will be blue, and then spray the medium gray or light gray color here. And basically this is just a light gray primer. We'll overcoat that with clear and it'll be just fine. It's almost the exact shade of gray that's on the race car. So go ahead and tape it up as you see here, so that we can get ready for the next color. To get this shade of blue that I needed for this particular documented vehicle, I had to mix some acrylic colors. I used Vallejo paints for this, and I mixed the colors for blue. I used a Vallejo Game Color Electric Blue and Vallejo Model Color Flat Blue, about 50-50 to get the color. Then of course thinned that out and sprayed that on using an airbrush in some nice thin coats to get full coverage. Once the paint has cured and you've pulled the tape off and done any touch-ups required, it's time to put your decals on. Now, some of these are pretty large, and I strongly suggest using some of the setting solutions to make sure they conform to contours. You'll also need to use plenty of warm water as you're working. If your water cools off, refresh it with some more warm water. Use that to place and put them into position. And use the decal setting solutions once you've squeezed out any water or trapped air bubbles under them to fix them into position for later on. Now let the decals dry overnight and then apply a clear coat over the entire model. Now it's time to collect the windows out of the kit. And they're already pre-decorated and they're very thin, so they look great. You'll want to apply the decals that go onto them at this point. And then once that's done, the window glass is installed from the outside and using some either white glue or some crystal clear glue from one of the aftermarket makers so that that's invisible when it dries. Now we can slide the body into position on the chassis, and it just really sets in place there. No need to glue it really, but as you can see, it really looks great, and it's quite an impressive looking model with the two-color paint and all of the decals that would mark a NASCAR kit. So as you can see, it's going to be a really impressive display for you to put on your shelf. Well, there you have it. This model is a dream to put together. It's actually quite easy. The only reason for the high skill rating is the decals and some of the finer parts with the roll cage, etc. But it's actually pretty easy to build. And the NASCAR kits coming out of Revell these days have really come a long way since the 90s. The overall fit and finish is excellent, and it looks great overall, and it fits in at 1/24 scale to the previous kits, so they'll still look right on the bench. Now, the one thing missing, of course, is no branded tires. They're just not in a position apparently to be able to place those on the sidewalls, but you can buy those from the aftermarket, and if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!